Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get the webinar started. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is MassCEC's Quarterly Funding Opportunities webinar for Spring 2018. MassCEC is a quasi-public organization. We are the economic development agency for the clean energy sector in the state of Massachusetts. Our mission is to grow and commercialize clean energy technologies in the Commonwealth, while also connecting employers, job seekers, students, and communities to the clean energy industry and helping spur innovations in the clean energy sector throughout the state. So today we're going to be presenting on two programs. MassCEC will discuss our InnovateMass program, which is open right now. Applications are due on June 1st. Ariel Horowitz will be presenting on InnovateMass, and then Rick Schwertfeger from the NSF will be presenting on the SBIR and STTR programs. And we'll have about 20 to 30 minutes at the end of the presentations for questions.
Thanks, Megan. I'm Ariel Horowitz, Director of Technology Development at MassCEC, here to talk about our InnovateMass program. Thanks again to everybody for joining us today. We do want to thank you again for the patience with having to reschedule this session. As some of you may have seen, we had some technical difficulties last week with our webinar service provider, but we're very glad that everybody was able to join us today. So this slide just shows an overview of the technology development and other support programs that MassCEC runs for startups and innovators in the state, just to provide an orientation to our overall funding approach and where the InnovateMass program lies within that. We endeavor to design our suite of programs to support innovators from cradle to hopefully a very successful exit, and that involves different programs that are designed to support innovation at different stages. Today we're going to be talking about the InnovateMass program, which is a demonstration project grant that lies sort of in the mid-range of our overall funding activities. The InnovateMass program provides grants of up to $250,000 for innovative clean energy technologies doing demonstration projects that will substantially assist in their commercialization. We require 50% cost share from the project team for this grant. However, it's a straight grant, so it's not refundable in any way, nor is it dilutive. The 50% cost share requirement suggests that the implication there is that about a third of the total project budget is being provided by the applicant team. We also provide third-party technical support as part of this program. What that means is that we have a technical consultant on our end who assists applicants and assists the awardees in formulating a good project, a completable project that's going to be able to assist in commercialization. We run the InnovateMass solicitation twice a year. There's a winter round and a summer round. And at the moment, the summer 2018 round is open for applications. Applications are due on June 1st. This program seeks technologies that are at a technology readiness level of approximately 5 through 7. What that means is that you've completed a proof of concept prototype, you've demonstrated some or all of the components in a field setting or a field-like setting, and that you are ready to demonstrate the entire system in the context in which it would be used commercially. This program is only open to Massachusetts-based companies and seeks, as all of our programs do, clean energy and water energy nexus innovation technologies, and again, seeks them at the demonstration stage. For this round 6B, we have a spotlight, which is the Clean Transportation Spotlight. We try to do a spotlight in every round of InnovateMass. That's just sort of a topic of interest for the energy agenda of the Commonwealth. In this round, we're seeking proposals that, not only proposals, but we would be interested to see proposals that speak to clean transportation and mobility. So just a little bit more about the Clean Transportation Spotlight. InnovateMass generally seeks to surface innovative ideas. Our spotlights seek to surface innovative ideas, again, for a topic that is of specific interest for the Commonwealth's energy agenda. Under this spotlight, we are seeking technologies that eliminate or reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with the transit system as a whole or any particular mode of transit, subject, of course, to the restriction that they fit under our definition of clean energy. We also have a really exciting opportunity under this spotlight to partner with the MBTA. So the MBTA has provided us with a short description of their energy challenges and has expressed interest in serving as a project partner to technology companies, in particular for this round of InnovateMass. The application requirements can be found, the application itself can be found on our website. The application consists of a form to fill out, a budget template to fill out, and a draft project work plan. The application form requires an overview of the technology. We want a description of the target market for the technology, and in particular, the role of the proposed InnovateMass project in providing the technology a path to market. We want an overview or summary of the project plan. What are you proposing to install? When are you going to install it? Where are you going to install it? And how much or how big will this installation be? We're also interested in the climate impact of your technology. And under that, we ask for something that we're calling a total addressable carbon analysis. So we understand that the climate impact of any particular demonstration project is not going to be very large. What we're interested in is if your technology was to be successfully commercialized and implemented on a large scale, what is the wedge of the climate equation that you are going after? And how much of that wedge could you reasonably deal with? And so we're very interested in sort of seeing the thought process from applicants on that question. Then we're also interested in the benefits to Massachusetts, and that could range from anything, including sort of specifically speaking to the energy challenges or policy mandates of Massachusetts and the New England region in particular, to capacity building within the Commonwealth, or anything else that would speak to our mission as an economic development agency. The budget form and the draft project work plan just give us more details as to what it is that you as the applicant are thinking in terms of your overall need for resources and, again, the project plan. So what are we looking for under this program? What makes a really strong application? We pay attention both to the strengths of the project and to the overall programmatic fit. So under the strengths of the project, we care about the technical merit. We need the technology to be new and interesting, and obviously have a strong chance of working. We care about the commercialization potential. We want applicants to demonstrate that they have a clear understanding of the market in which they're operating and the customers that they're aiming for. And obviously that there is a market need for this technology that is clear and demonstrable. We're also looking for a strong project plan. The project needs to be achievable within the timeline and the requested budget. And we're also looking for a project where successful completion of that project will result in an improved business case for the technology itself. So ultimately, what we're looking for under the strengths of the project is a high likelihood of the project being successful, both for us and for the applicant. Under programmatic fit, again, we care about the benefits to Massachusetts. So overall alignment with our energy policy and capacity building, as I mentioned, which would include things like new facilities that could be of use for the industry as a whole in Massachusetts, a substantial workforce development component, or anything along those lines. And again, we're also looking for the climate impacts. So this goes back to that total addressable carbon analysis that I was mentioning. How big is the wedge of carbon that this project addresses? So the biggest question here is, if the project is successful, we want to see a high likelihood that that success will matter. So just to run through some frequently asked questions, Is the spotlight, the clean transportation spotlight, a carve out? It is not a carve out. The spotlight itself is not a carve out. We are evaluating each of the applications that we get compared to all the applications. So it's one single applicant pool. We don't have an amount of funding that's reserved just for the spotlight, but we are sort of interested in particular in that topic. What qualifies as clean energy? This is defined in our enabling statute, which you can see the reference there. In essence, everything that would qualify under clean energy is, as most people would expect, so it would include clean generation, solar generation, wind generation, advanced biofuels, but also energy efficiency, demand response, as well as enabling technologies for clean generation and integration thereof. So, for example, software projects are eligible under that definition. The expected duration of the project is 24 months, so you should plan a project that should last about 2 years and consider that as well in the budget. Right, so that's I apologize for that typo. That's the spotlight question. Does the project site have to be in Massachusetts? The project may take place in any relevant site. However, as I mentioned previously, the benefits to Massachusetts are considered in our evaluation. So just to highlight this particular question, what we want to see in an applicant team, the lead applicant should be the technology developer, but every project, because it's a demonstration project, should come along with a proposal for where the technology is actually going to be demonstrated. And many times that involves a project partner, for example, the MBTA, as I mentioned earlier. So not all of the project partners have to be located in Massachusetts, nor do all the project sites have to be located in Massachusetts, but we do care about the benefits to Massachusetts in the project. And then finally, what defines a Massachusetts-based company? So the lead applicant, the technology developer, has to be a Massachusetts-based company, and we define that as having a majority of the following in the state: sales and marketing, manufacturing operations, the company corporate headquarters, and primary R&D. If you don't have all four of those, a majority of those that you do have must be in the state. Just as an illustrative success story under this program, Boston-based XL Hybrids received an InnovateMass grant in 2013 to demonstrate their hybrid electric vehicle retrofit technology. Following that project, which has been successfully completed, the company has closed successful Series C and D financing rounds, and that includes partners such as Exelon's venture arm and IKEA, and has had a range of successful deployments since. So just to go over again the timeline and some logistics, the applications are available at our website. You can see the URL there, and these slides will be posted on our website after this session for reference. Questions are due tomorrow on the RFP, and we will post the responses next week. Applications are due June 1st by 4 p.m. Finalists will be notified in July. Then there's a mandatory pitch coaching interim stage just to help finalists make as successful a pitch as possible. The pitch session will be the week of August 13th, and we will announce the winners sometime in September. Just to answer a couple of other frequently asked questions about these logistics, as this suggests, this is a two-stage application process. So we get the written proposals in, and then the finalists will come in to pitch. We usually get about 10 finalists on that pitch day, and then usually select in the range of 5 awards, depending on what the budget requests are.
Thanks, Ariel. So just before I turn it over to Rick, we have gotten a few questions in. We're going to hold all of the questions until the end of the presentations, but please continue to use that questions pane through GoToWebinar to submit any questions, and we will pass those off to the respective presenters during the Q&A portion of the program. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rick at NSF, who is going to talk about the SBIR program.
Great, thank you, Ariel and Megan. It's nice to talk to you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity to share our program. Let me share my screen, make sure that you guys can see what's going on. Okay, do you guys see the title page?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about the SBIR, STTR programs at the National Science Foundation. And like they just mentioned, if you have questions, please hold them off to the end. I'm going to go through some of these fairly quickly. We do have permission to make these slides available to all the attendees afterwards. So first of all, who are we and what is the program? The National Science Foundation is a federal agency. We're a branch of, or a part of the executive branch of the U.S. federal government. And this slide says our current budget is $7 billion, slightly more. And hopefully next year, the current congressional budget guidance is actually to give us an increase in budget next year, which would be nice. The SBIR, STTR programs, first of all, I know we're government, we use a lot of acronyms. SBIR is a Small Business Innovative Research program, and Science Technology Transfer, or Small Business Technology Transfer programs is STTR. So these programs are funding small businesses by definition and trying to find and catalyze commercialization of high-risk technologies and help promote R&D within those businesses. Funding for small businesses from us comes in the form of essentially pre-seed funding. And again, this is for high-risk technology innovations, not for incremental, small, evolutionary steps of existing technologies, but for really revolutionary technologies. We're typically the first money into a company. We fund about 400 companies a year at both the phase 1 and phase 2 levels, which I'll describe more in a minute. And the funding comes in the form of a grant. It's not a contract. You don't owe any product or any service to the government as a result of this. It's not a loan. It's equity-free investment. You don't give the government any shares in your company. So it's a great way to get non-dilutive funding to get some technologies commercialized. The main aims of our program are pretty simple. Like I mentioned, we're really trying to develop high-impact, high-risk, revolutionary engineering and science-based products and services. The program is trying to support transformational, game-changing technologies. We're willing to do this at an early stage when the technology is still very risky, unlike a lot of private money where they want to see the technology fairly heavily de-risked and ready for immediate commercialization or near-term commercialization. We're willing to take on that technology risk to try to help move it along to the point where it can attract private funding. Most of the programs and companies that we fund are across a broad range of technologies, and we fund essentially any area of STEM R&D, with the exception of drug development. I talked about de-risking the technology. In addition to the money that you get from NSF, we go beyond that. We really are pushing commercialization. There's been a pretty long history of some SBIR programs funding companies that just live off of SBIR grant money for decades. And that's not our mission. Our mission is to have companies come to us, get funding, commercialize a product, and never have to come back to the U.S. government for further funding because they'll be commercially successful. In addition to the money, the grantees will receive training in business development, and they get a lot of mentorship from program directors. I'm a former entrepreneur. I'm an angel investor. I've been a scientist for 25 years prior to that, and most of those program directors come from the entrepreneurial world as well. So we understand what it takes to get a startup off the ground, and we provide a lot of mentorship as part of our program. The winning of an SBIR or STTR award is a very strong signal to outside investors and is a really good way to help motivate them to invest in your company as well, because they understand we have a very competitive diligence process, and so they want to take advantage of that and help fund companies that we've already done the vetting on. We also do a lot of networking. You get instant access to all the other companies that we fund, and even the connections that the program directors have. We're willing to try to help connect you with appropriate companies and people to make your business successful. A few statistics. Some of these are a little bit out of date. I'll apologize. This slide needs to be updated, but I think as of 2016 is the last full fiscal year these were available for. 92% of our awardees had 10 or fewer employees. 87% of the awardees have never had a prior Phase 2 award, SBIR, STTR award from any other government agency. And 78% of the awardees are less than 5 years old. The companies are less than 5 years old. And so it's really, truly a startup funding mechanism. Some more stats. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm kind of a dog that I'm working from home today. The funding rate for Phase 1s is approximately anywhere. It ranges year to year, but typically 16% was 2016. I think it's a little bit lower right now. The average Phase 2 funding rate is a little bit higher than Phase 1s because we really have de-risked some of the technology and really want some of them to move on to the Phase 2s. So we have approximately 40% funding rate. Again, it varies year to year, anywhere from 30 to 50% for Phase 2. We have roughly a dozen companies, give or take, that end up getting acquired each year from after their Phase 2s. Some of them even during their Phase 2s. I had a company that was just about halfway done with their Phase 2 that just got acquired a couple of months ago for tens of millions of dollars. So we do have a nice track record of getting some good success for companies to exit early. About half of all the Phase 2 grantees go on to raise significant third-party funding. It's like I said before, the NSF award helps leverage a lot of that outside money. Some of the things that we fund, I mentioned we fund any area of technology, but the real key is, regardless of the area of technology, it has to truly be novel, game-changing, revolutionary research and product development. We want the technology risk. We're fine with technology risk. And similar to what the MassCEC programs, we want to see that there is a commercial market that's available for this technology if it is developed. We want to see that there's been customer discovery. We want to see that the companies have engaged in that commercial space so that they know that there's a good market and they're solving a real need in the market space. We do not fund basic research for the sake of knowledge creation in the SBIR program. The National Science Foundation does fund basic research for knowledge creation at the academic level. In fact, most of that $7 billion of our money is dedicated to funding academic research. We have a roughly $200 million a year budget for the SBIR STTR program. We don't fund incremental evolutionary optimizations of existing products, like I mentioned. So that's very important. And we don't fund market studies and things like that. This is really for R&D. So a little bit about our program. The Phase 1 and Phase 2 programs are really where our program stops. We don't have an official Phase 3 stage like some of the Department of Defense SBIRs or maybe NASA SBIRs do. The Phase 1 is $225,000 for a 6 to 12-month project, and the Phase 2 is $750,000 for 24 months. And there are other supplements available if you get to the Phase 2 stage. So between Phase 1, Phase 2, and supplements, you're eligible for over $1.5 million worth of funding within about 3.5 years. And the goal is to help you commercialize that technology so you hire employees and generate jobs and pay taxes, and that goes back in to fund more SBIR research. Some basic information. The current solicitation is open, and deadline is coming up very soon. The next deadline is June 14th. There are several registrations that you need to do that I'll talk about in a minute, and time is precious to be able to hit that June 14th deadline at this point. Submitting a proposal to NSF does not constitute a public disclosure. That's very important because a lot of people are concerned that if they put confidential information in the proposals, that they will end up having to not be able to protect it with patents and that sort of thing. And I want to assure you that's not the case. You can mark areas proprietary and confidential, and then we can't release those to the public, even if there's a Freedom of Information Act. We're allowed to hold that back as redacted sections of your proposal. Proposals are reviewed typically within about 4 to 5 months. We have technical experts and commercial experts, both, that look at these proposals. The phase 1 proposals, most of the reviewers tend to be a little more on the technical side, because it's still pretty early for commercialization evaluations of business plans and cost targets and that sort of thing. The phase 2s, we have a roughly 50-50 split of technical and commercial reviewers for the phase 2 proposals. And then we try to award the winning proposals within about 6 months after submission, a little bit longer for the phase 2s. And it's a long cycle time. If you get declined in the June 14th cycle, you'll be notified at least a month prior to the next deadline, which will be in December, and then you're able to reapply in the December cycle. There is no limit to how many times you can apply for phase 1, as long as you're making substantial changes and document those changes with each submittal. The topic areas, you can read these at your leisure. There's any area of STEM research, really, that we cover. And like I mentioned, we don't do drug development, but we do other biological technologies, everything from semiconductors to ed tech to smart health, robotics, semiconductors, Internet of Things, information technologies. We really, again, focus on the revolutionary nature of the innovation. So a new dating app is probably not going to fit in the information technologies program, because that's not particularly revolutionary, unless the algorithms that need to be developed are so new and revolutionary and potentially impactful in other areas that may qualify. But otherwise, those are types of things that we look to avoid. So the registrations I mentioned, there are 4 key registrations you have to do. And the second one listed on this slide is probably the most important one to worry about first, because they've got some new procedures for the SAM registration, and it can take up to a month now and sometimes even more, to get a SAM registration complete. And if you have not done the SAM registration, you plan to apply for the June deadline, you need to get on that like literally today. And the other registrations typically don't take quite as long. So worry about the SAM first. You're not even allowed to submit a proposal unless you have a full SAM registration completed prior to June 14th. And that's a change from before. You used to be able to submit and get the SAM finalized after the proposal deadline, but that's not the case anymore. So be sure to cover that, and then get registered with FastLane.nsf.gov, and then you'll be all set. These are the same registration as I just mentioned. The best way to learn more information is to go to our website, seedfund.nsf.gov. There's a yellow button called How to Apply. You can just go click on it and start stepping through to see what the process looks like. There's a FastLane guide that walks you through literally every screen by screen what you'll need to do when you do the submittal, and that way there aren't any surprises. We highly recommend that you don't wait until 3 p.m. on June 14th to submit a proposal that's due at 5 p.m. The reason is because most times when people submit a proposal, they will have some sort of warning or alert the first time they submit it. And depending on the severity of that warning or alert, it may prevent you from applying if it's a yellow light versus a red light, essentially, on the warning. And if you wait till the end, you don't have time to correct those things and resubmit, then you're going to miss the deadline. And we do not give exceptions to that deadline if you're late because you did not hit that button in time. If you had everything done in time and everything was okay, but there was a problem on our end, we have made exceptions and allowed people to submit because there was something wrong with our system and it shut down or whatever. But you can't count on that. You need to submit early. You can even submit, you can start submitting now, and you can submit updates. It's called a proposal file update. And when you submit that proposal file update, it essentially replaces your previous version. The only version we see is the last version that's there at 5 o'clock local time on the day of the submission. So I encourage you to get your registrations done and get your and get everything submitted early before even the day of the deadline. I think I've covered all that already. There are a couple things to remember when you submit. One is that the sponsored research office, or sometimes called the administrative, needs to submit the proposal. The principal investigator has to click submit, but unless the principal investigator also has SRO access rights, the SRO has to also hit submit. Otherwise, you won't be fully submitted. So read the instructions very carefully. You'll know you've submitted when you get a note that says your proposal number starts with a 1-8. You'll get a temporary number prior to that, but until you're actually to the point where you can see a proposal number starting with a 1-8 for fiscal year 18, in this case, you won't be done. So make sure to go back and do every step needed. So in general, keep in mind, we're not a customer, we're more like an investor. We like to help mentor and give advice and be used as a resource. We don't really worry about topical fit. If you submit to the wrong topic, we'll just give it to the correct program manager and let them run it through their review process. So we don't decline proposals for topical fit. Our solicitations are very generic. You don't need to wait for a particular solicitation because you need to only submit a solicitation for organic PV solar cells, for example. You can submit anytime under the photonics energy category if you have any kind of PV technology, for example. The funding can only be used for R&D. That's important. So we expect you to be working on fundraising right away and getting other money coming into your company to run other parts of your operations and your sales and marketing and business development. You can only use this money for R&D with a few minor exceptions. Long-term success metrics for the program and the grantees really is largely economic. We really count on job growth and revenues and getting outside investment and eventually, hopefully, doing a successful exit or licensing your technology or whatever it is. That's how we measure the success of our companies and our programs. We encourage you to pick the right program director based on your topic and start communicating with the program director. You can send us a 1 or 2 page executive summary, and we can give you some feedback and let you know if it's a good fit or if we really think that you'd be wasting everybody's time in submitting a proposal. As a lot of questions and answers, I'll let you guys ask particular questions. Topic fit, I talked about. Don't worry about topic fit. We'll get it to the right place. The best ways to really increase your chances of success are to be working on truly revolutionary and risky game-changing technologies, but only ones that have a good commercialization potential and that have some societal impact. If you have those 3 things, those are the projects that are most appealing to us. A lot of people are worried about the government's rights to technology that the government pays for. Just Google the Bayh-Dole Act. The government has never exercised those marching rights to come in and take over technologies developed by the government, by private enterprise. So there's really nothing to worry about. But if you're curious, you can just find out more about the Bayh-Dole Act, and then feel free to ask a program director more questions. And ways to communicate with program directors, email is the most efficient way so we can manage our time, and we may or may not pick up the phone depending on how busy we are. You can try to call us, but sending us an email, all the email addresses are listed on the websites. So feel free to get a hold of us anytime when you have information or questions about what we're doing. So again, seedfund.nsf.gov. That's really the key website to remember, and you can start there. And feel free to follow us on social media, but really talk to program directors directly. Get a hold of us and ask us questions, and we'll help guide you through the process. Okay, that's it.
Thanks so much, Rick.
You bet.
So just a few other relevant funding opportunities to know are up on the screen now. And then we just wanted to mention one additional MassCEC program that will be opening soon, the Catalyst program, which is a little bit earlier stage than InnovateMass. It's a prototyping grant for $65,000. The next solicitation for that program is likely to be launched this July. So for our next quarterly funding opportunities webinar, we will be discussing the Catalyst program. So thank you all for your attendance and for sending in some questions. We are going to start answering those, but if you do have any more questions that come up, feel free to enter those into that questions pane and we will answer them in the order that they were received. So the first question, we got a question for both presenters on software, if software products were eligible for the grants. So I believe Ariel mentioned this in the InnovateMass presentation, that yes, InnovateMass does consider software technologies as eligible.
Yeah, software technologies are definitely eligible. Just to sort of clarify what would count as a demonstration project with a piece of software, obviously that isn't going to be sort of physically installed anywhere. We don't really care where the servers are, but we are interested in sort of demonstrating a capability of the software that hasn't been demonstrated before. So for example, getting a really great data set of training data and then demonstrating that you have a machine learning algorithm that can produce good results based on that training data set. Anything along those lines in terms of sort of demonstrating a larger scale implementation of your software product.
So we got a similar question for Rick at NSF. Does NSF mostly look for hardware solutions, or are there also opportunities for software companies to participate?
Both. So we certainly do look for hardware solutions, but in many cases, there's either software needed to go with that hardware, or it can be a pure software solution. It really needs to have that revolutionary, game-changing nature to it, though. Writing code is not new. People have been doing it for decades now. So what's new about your software? Not just what it does, like I kind of mentioned a dating app, as an example, but you could even think of something more technical as, the way to control software to control, a robot, for example. New software to control a robot may be new, but that doesn't mean it's innovative. So what is new about it? Are you using artificial intelligence to do it? Are you using it in a way that's never been done before? So yes, we do take software, but it has to have that revolutionary nature of it as well.
Great. And then Rick had addressed some points on NSF and confidentiality of the applications that are submitted. So I'm just going to turn it over to Ariel quickly to address the confidentiality for the InnovateMass proposals.
So thanks. Unlike for the NSF program, we do consider all of the application materials that we receive to be public or sort of publicly releasable. We don't put them all online, but they are all subject to public record requests. So when formulating an application to InnovateMass, that's just something to keep in mind. Do not put any business sensitive or confidential information into that proposal. This is a little bit different then what happens during the project. During the project, our technical consultant that I mentioned earlier serves as sort of a firewall between us and confidential information. So we are able to have companies produce confidential information during the course of the project. We, as MassCEC, just don't want to see any of it.
Great. The next question is for Ariel. Someone was asking for the contact information for the technical consultant that is contracted for InnovateMass and whether applicants can reach out to them before submitting a proposal.
So we do not give out their contact information to applicants. The reason for that is that they actually join us on the review panel during the application review stage and will attend the pitch day as a judge. So that would be an unfair advantage to any particular applicant to get coached on their application prior. However, they do collaborate very closely with the awardees once those projects have been awarded.
So the next question is for Rick. If a company has applied to NSF before through a different program, can they resubmit a revised application?
Yes, they can. There's no limit to how many times you can apply for a phase 1 proposal. If you apply to one program director or one program and get denied, some companies do try to apply to a different program hoping for a different result. And sometimes it does happen, but it's really important to understand that most of the proposals get declined for one of two reasons. They're not revolutionary enough innovations, or there's no clear path to a good commercial success. And no matter what program you apply to, if those are limitations, you're going to still have those. You are required to make substantial modifications to the proposal. Substantial is a subjective term, so at the minimum, you're required to at least address the weaknesses brought up by the previous reviewers and submit a one-page summary of the changes that you made and mark the application as a resubmittal, even if it's to a new program.
Thanks, Rick. So the next question is on InnovateMass. If a company has a few different projects in the pipeline, can they apply with multiple applications for different projects? And then somewhat of a follow-on to that, is it possible to apply with multiple project partners or demonstration sites under the same application?
So we would recommend not submitting multiple applications in the same round. What we would recommend instead is to sort of present a project plan that really makes sense for your technology and for your company, and to focus on explaining why that project makes sense. So we have had applications in the past that will propose, for example, 3 small installations in different sites instead of one large installation. And then we'll go on to say that the motivation behind that has to do with getting a wide enough range of data or demonstrating the product in a variety of different conditions or anything along those lines. And as long as there's a compelling reason to have multiple different demonstration sites, that's not something that we would consider to be a barrier. However, again, we would recommend that companies submit only a single application with a single sort of well-formulated project plan.
Great. The next question is for Rick. For NSF, is there a dedicated fund for clean tech? And if so, how much is typically available in the aggregate every year?
There's not a dedicated fund for clean tech. Any of the SBIR or STTR proposals that come in all pull from the same $200 million fund. So I typically handle a lot of the clean tech. If it's solar energy, it usually comes to me. Biofuels will go to another program director in the Chemical and Environmental Technologies program. So within our own portfolios, we have essentially our own pot of money that we manage. And so I will have clean tech proposals mixed in with semiconductor chip design proposals, mixed in with Internet of Things, edge sensors proposals, and it all comes out of my, essentially my pot of money. So the short answer is it's a $200 million pot of money, but none of it's particularly dedicated to clean tech.
Great. So we only have one more question right now at the moment that we'll answer in just a minute. We do have the webinar scheduled to run until 2:30, so we can stay on the line. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to send them in and we will answer them. So the last question on InnovateMass is for Ariel. On the InnovateMass project work plan spreadsheet, there are two tabs. One is a project work plan tab and one is a project summary tab. So just asking for some clarification on the difference between those two tabs.
Sure. So the project work plan, this is a good opportunity to dig a little bit more into the project work plan, which is actually one of the more important documents in sort of the entire proposal package. The project work plan has 4 tabs in it. There's a revision history, which obviously fresh applications won't have filled out, a detailed budget tab, which breaks down what the grant request is by task and the cost share that's being provided by the applicant by task, and then sort of how those costs are distributed among personnel, subcontractors, materials, and other sorts of direct costs. And then there are the 2 tabs referenced in the question, so the project work plan and the project summary. And what you'll notice is that the project summary actually auto-populates from the project work plan tab. So the work plan, sort of within the work plan, will go through and list all of the different milestones that are part of the project, the grant funding requests associated with each of those milestones, and the cost share requests associated with each of those milestones, the timeline of each milestone, a description of the work that the applicant envisions taking place under the milestone, and then a column that goes through what the actual deliverables will be. And really the difference between the project summary tab and the project work plan tab is just that the summary does not include the deliverable description. And that's really so that we at MassCEC can have an easily shareable sort of table demonstrating what's going on under the project, sort of a display table, whereas the deliverable information is of a little bit less interest to be shared, for example, as a success story or anything along those lines.
Great. So that rounds out our current questions. As I mentioned, we will stay on the line just in case anything else pops in. But thank you again to both Ariel and Rick for presenting today, and thank you everyone who joined us. People can also feel free to submit questions to us via email, and we will respond to those as well as post them to our website. We will also be posting a copy of these slides to our website as well. So we got another question on InnovateMass. What was the average grant side for InnovateMass over the last few rounds?
That is a great question. Let me actually pull up that data so that I can answer that. So over the last few rounds, our average award has been in the range of $100,000 to $125,000. However, our award cap did increase from $150,000 to $250,000 starting in the round that we just announced the winners of a few weeks ago. So we accept applications ranging in grant request all the way from sort of a very small request up to the $250K. I think in practice, this tends to depend on how much funding in terms of materials, project partners, and so forth the project actually needs to succeed. as well as the cost share requirement that we do have, which we don't want to be burdensome, but the point of that requirement is that the applicant team have some skin in the game on the project. So I believe in this past round, we had awards ranging from about $40,000 all the way up to approximately the max $250, and then the average was about $120. But it just depends on the range of applications that we actually receive.
Megan, can I make a couple comments?
Absolutely.
So one of the things I didn't mention was the TRL. I think Ariel had mentioned that you're looking for a TRL, technology readiness level, in the 5 to 7 range in your program. We typically fall earlier than that in our program, which kind of makes a nice segue. You know, you can come to NSF and get funded on a TRL of even a 2 or 3. And get it to the point where you're ready to be up to a 5 or 6, and then come to MassCEC for further funding. It might make a nice joint funding effort for your company. The other comment I want to make was what was it? I forgot. But anyway, so I just want to mention that that was a possibility to come to us for earlier stage funding.
Thanks, Rick. And we do actually love to see that sort of sequence. So the Catalyst program that I mentioned earlier, that's our version of an early stage sort of prototyping grant, but it's the funding amount is relatively smaller than the SBIR funding level. And we love to see companies who have done a successful project, either through Catalyst, SBIR, any similar program, that can then come into Innovate and sort of demonstrate as to where the previous grant got them and why they're at the right stage now for an InnovateMass grant.
Well, I remember the other thing too I was going to mention, cost share and matching. The NSF grant, there is no cost share or matching funds needed for a phase 1 or a phase 2 award. However, if you want to get a phase 2B supplement, that's a matching program. So if after you get a phase 2 award, if you attract up to $1 million of investment, outside third-party investment, or up to $1 million of sales revenues from the project that we were funding, you can qualify for up to 50% of that as a matching grant to further the research on the technology. So you can get up to $500,000 additional money as a matching grant to other outside investments. But the phase 1 and the phase 2 do not have a matching a cost share requirement.
Great. Thanks, Rick. We're going to wrap up the webinar now. It looks like we are not getting any more questions in. So thank you again for your attendance today. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions on the programs. And thanks again to both Rick and Ariel for the presentations.